Hello and welcome to the Raising Kitten podcast. My name is Marsh Naidu and I blog at raisingkitten.org, where we curate resources for parents raising children with disabilities. As always, remember the content brought to you on this podcast is for your information only, and if you seek advice for your specific situation, to contact a trained professional. So grab that cup of coffee, put your feet up, and get ready for some awesome conversation. Good morning and welcome to the Raising Kitten podcast. I am joined by Memphis Rox this morning. Mia is a yoga teacher, a PT, as well as a rock climber. Mia, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, listen, tell us what got you started in rock climbing. How did that adventure begin?
Yeah. So I grew up in California, and over the summers, I spent at least 2 weeks at a time backpacking with my dad and my brother. Throughout my childhood, I was spending my summers in Yosemite and the Sierras around these huge granite walls, just hiking up them at that time. And that I really loved that connection with nature. Of course, Yosemite, the Sierras is a huge place for rock climbing. And so you would see climbers up on the wall while you were hiking around Yosemite Valley, and that was super cool to see. And it wasn't until later in life, when I was about in high school, that some of my friends started getting into rock climbing, and I was able to go with them every once in a while, but it's a pretty expensive sport. So it wasn't super accessible to me in my childhood. But I kept coming back to it because rock climbing, like yoga, it gives you this space to really focus on your breath and your body and only what you're doing in that very moment. Yes. If you have all these thoughts about what has to happen that day, they can't really enter your brain because otherwise you're going to fall. So it really gave me this nice quiet space to focus on my body, focus on my breath, and just get some movement in and also have fun with my friends. So that's what really got me in initially. And I just kept over the years finding myself kind of step away from it if there weren't rock climbing walls near me, and then return to it whenever I had the opportunity. And in Memphis, I've been really lucky in finding Memphis Rox, that has a really amazing facility and really fun rock climbs, and been able to get back into the sport.
So this is a twofold question, Mia. Firstly, tell us about Rox Memphis, because that in itself is such a dynamic place. And guys, if you'll live in Memphis or you're visiting, you'll have got to stop by. It's in the vicinity of Stax Museum, and there's a whole lot of history in the neighborhood, and the murals are breathtaking. But just tell us about Rox Memphis, and then tell us what kind of gave the impetus to start the adaptive climbing program?
So I actually found Memphis Rox through a friend who was in town at the time, who was looking for internships to help garden. And so, like you mentioned, Memphis Rox is a really amazing facility, and they do a million things. Their primary mission, it was created by Tom Shadanak, who is the owner of Memphis Rox. And the mission was to, one, make rock climbing more accessible, because, as I had mentioned, it's a really expensive sport. And so what Memphis Rox's mission is that they do not want to turn anyone away. So they have yoga classes, they have an after school program, and of course they have their rock climbing facility, and everything that they offer is pay what you can. So they have suggested donation prices, but if you aren't able to meet those prices, they will allow you to pay whatever you're able to access the facility. And the reason that it's located in South Memphis is so that people in that community in particular have a safe space to go to participate in, family-friendly activities and hang out with their community in a space where they can do movement. And they do much more than just, they have their fitness center and their climbing gym and yoga classes, but they have so much more than that. They have a community closet that's open to whoever comes. They have partnered with Forward Counseling and have free counseling services. They have a free lunch program. They, like I mentioned, they have their after school program. They also have programs where outreach programs where they literally drive around the streets of Memphis and try and find people who might want to spend their time in a climbing gym and just show them that Memphis Rox exists and bring them over there and offer them the space to hang out at Memphis Rox rather than wherever they might be hanging out otherwise. So there are so many things. I probably didn't cover all of them that Memphis Rox does. And so when someone, I feel like, comes into Memphis Rox and starts working for them or climbing there that isn't familiar with their mission, they learn about all these things that they do, and then Memphis Rox kind of just sucks you in. So it's hard to not get really ingrained in their community, which is just so, everyone there is really inviting and really supportive for each other and always looking out for each other. And I think that's because a lot of the people that have worked there have experienced times when they needed more support. And so that's really the mission behind Memphis Rox. And so them creating this adaptive rock climbing program really came very naturally because the group that they're working with, Adaptive Climbing Group, is another nonprofit organization that has chapters nationwide. And their mission, again, is to make rock climbing accessible, one, for people with different abilities, and two, to try and take out the financial component to rock climbing and make it more financially accessible, especially for individuals with disabilities that have so many other costs in life. So they want to make sure that these individuals have the ability to participate in a sport that's just like fun and don't have to have all these extra costs, especially as a person, with a disability that is wanting to participate in an adaptive sport. You might have to purchase all this adaptive equipment. And so they wanted to also make sure that the adaptive equipment would just be present and available for you. And so the adaptive equipment that Memphis Rox has gotten is a combination of equipment that they've purchased independently, but also equipment that they've received from Adaptive Climbing Group.
I think the community in Memphis as well really supports the efforts of Rock Memphis. As you mentioned, those kind of social barriers to access are removed, and it opens up the opportunity to try these new experiences. And Kaylin got to climb with Mia at a free clinic they have, which is on the first Tuesday of every month from 6:30 to 8:30. So for those parents out there that are wanting their kids to experience a new activity, please check out the clinic that is held at Rox Memphis. And Mia, I know you will give us more information as how to contact you all later on. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, so Mia, guys, is a yoga teacher, rock climber, but also a physical therapist. So I'd like to kind of inquire more in that direction as well. What would you say, Mia, are some of the benefits of rock climbing when you look at the movement aspect?
Yeah. So as a physical therapist, earlier in my career, I practiced in pediatrics. And so I worked in the schools and with early intervention. And that's actually in upstate New York. And that's actually when I had my first experience with adaptive rock climbing, when I was practicing in that space. And in working with the kids that I was working with and then seeing this adaptive rock climbing program, I instantly was in love and I wanted all of my kids that I worked with to climb. And unfortunately, I found it and experienced the program right before the onset of COVID. It was probably like January or February of 2020. And so there was one event and then COVID hit and then I moved out of the state. So I think one, as you mentioned, it's a really fun and different experience for people that might not be able to climb vertically a lot of the time or feel limited in that. So many playgrounds are all about vertical structures, and that can be hard for a lot of kids to access. And so this is super nice because we can take away some of the weight. We can use pulley systems that make them only need to lift, a third of their weight, a ninth of their weight. And that makes it so much more easier to send the wall. And it makes the experience a lot more fun. On the PT side of things, as a physical therapist working with kids, you can try and make games that are fun, but ultimately they know it's just therapy. So rock climbing is really one of those things where it is truly just a fun movement event for them. And it's a time that's like a little bit scary. You're going up a wall, you're going up high, you might fall off and like swing around a little bit. And so it challenges you mentally to like keep trying and persevering, which I know a lot of kids with developmental delays, have to constantly work with that motivation to keep persevering and keep working towards a goal. And some kids, that's really easy. And, every day they're just pushing to skip or hop or crawl, whatever it might be. And then there are other kids where that's harder to find that motivation. And so this might be an area where they can really feel motivated because they get such amazing feedback of like swinging or going up the wall. A big part of PT, if kids are ambulatory and they get tightness in their muscles, is trying to have them shift their weight over their legs, over their joints. And doing things where they're bearing weight on their legs, on their arms to help build the strength in their bones and help lengthen their muscles. And rock climbing is great because you have to shift your weight over your legs to get up the wall. You have to push off your hands at points. And so it gives them all these opportunities very naturalistically. And people don't necessarily realize how much more beneficial it is to have your weight going through your arms, going through your legs, shifting over that to one, lengthen the muscle and also strengthen your muscles and bones. And so it offers these really unique and natural opportunities that are also fun and that people want to engage in.
Because I was like just surprised. I mean, I watched two kids climb up the wall and it was amazing to me. Usually you've got to really spend so much of time on cueing, like, for motor planning, because that is a component that you work on, like that reciprocal movement up. Mm-hmm. And it was almost intuitive when they went up the wall. It wasn't that constant processing. Okay, right arm up first, push off on your left leg, hoist yourself up. It just kind of naturally happened. And that was so cool to see. That was I just thought that was so cool, Mia. So listen, how much of adaptation or modification can be done on the wall? I mean, there might be some listeners out there who, with certain impairments, that might think, is this something that I can do? What would your feedback to that be, Mia?
Absolutely. I've gotten, I've worked with a variety of climbers that have different abilities. And so what I'll mention that we have at Memphis Rox is we have seated options so that people can be sitting in a padded chair with either back and head support or just back support. And then they can be using a pulley system to physically be pulling themselves through, like a pull-up bar. If grasping a bar is challenging, then we have gloves that help you kind of wrap your hand around the bar and hold your hand in place. So you're using more of your larger trunk muscles to pull you up. We also, I had a kiddo that I was climbing with who has a lot of motor planning challenges. It's challenging for her to kind of tell her body what to do. And so we actually just used the space to, put her in the seated option and have her swing back and forth. And every once in a while, we would help her pull up with the bar and give her different verbal cues and tactile cues and kind of hold her hands on the bar because she didn't like the gloves. And so we would pull up every once in a while, and then we would just swing back and forth for a little bit. And even just having that opportunity to experience that, swinging was something that she doesn't get a lot. So that was a great experience. We also have other modifications. So as I mentioned earlier, we can decrease the amount of weight that you're pulling up the wall. So using different pulley systems, so we can take away 2/3. We can change our weight system so you're only pulling 1/3 or 1/9 of your body weight. And then we can also offer other modifications for people who have different visual skills. So we have laser pointers that we might use to kind of explain where you need to go next. And there are headsets that we can use as well for people with hearing deficits, so that you can clearly hear your belayer, the person that's helping you manage the rope as you go up the wall. And else. And as you saw, we have people that will climb right next to you. And so that can be helpful if you have motor planning challenges or are having challenges with strength and pulling yourself up the wall. Just someone that's there by you, kind of making you feel comforted, instructing you on where to go, showing you what climb comes or what hold might come next. So there's a lot of different modifications that we can make, and both for kiddos and for adults. So all of the equipment that we have is for whatever population comes to us.
Mia, tell me, what is the vision for the climbing clinic? How do you see this evolving? How can we help you all get the word out? How can we support this community? And I would think, lastly, how can folks get to experience what Memphis Rox has to offer in terms of the adaptive climbing program?
So, because we're working with Adaptive Climbing Group, I'll kind of describe the vision of Adaptive Climbing Group and what has happened in other cities that have had this group come to their gyms. So Adaptive Climbing Group, in other cities, the climbing clinic has essentially turned into a meeting point for people with disabilities so that they, one, can find, a community of climbers that has similar skills, and then can also, turn into a group that meets outside of these free clinics. So the free clinics is really this starting point, and then we hope that climbers, their families, their friends can learn how to belay them, can learn how to use the rope systems, and then just be able to have access to this equipment whenever they might want to go rock climbing.
For parents in Memphis that want to experience this opportunity and have their families join in, how can they reach you, Mia?
So they can reach us through a variety of platforms. Adaptive Climbing Group does have a website, and then they also have an Instagram where we regularly post when we're going to be having a climbing clinic, called Adapt Climb Group is the Instagram name. And if you want to stay in touch with Adaptive Climbing Group, we send out monthly newsletters about any events coming up at Memphis Rox. So sometimes we always have our climbing clinics on the first Tuesday of every month from 6:30 to 8:30, as you mentioned previously. But we also have volunteer training sessions. So if family members or other people in the community want to learn how to volunteer for the program, learn these different rope systems and how to belay, that's an opportunity that comes up about every other month, and kind of as needed when we're looking for more volunteers. And you can learn more about that if you email southeast@adaptiveclimbinggroup.com.
Mia, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us more about the adaptive rock climbing. And we wish you guys the best of luck and definitely hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me and helping spread the word.
Thank you for listening along on the podcast today. We would highly appreciate you leaving a positive review and a star rating on your podcast platform. If you are in the Soulsville district in Memphis, Tennessee, be sure to visit Memphis Rox, and their website is www.memphisrox, and that's ROX.org. And if you are a parent or an individual with disability, do keep in mind their monthly rock climbing clinic that is held on the first Tuesday of the month. Once again, thank you for listening along on the podcast, and as always, remember, get to the top of your mountain. This is Marsh Naidu signing off.